I felt like my heart was going to beat right out of my chest. The bedroom door flew open, but it wasn't my husband who walked in. A stranger dressed entirely in black walked straight toward the walk-in closet where I was hiding. He locked a freezing gaze on me and whispered, "Choose. Scream right now and die slowly at the hands of your husband, or shut up and join my game to destroy him." I never imagined my wedding night would end like this. Ironic, isn't it? Right now, I invite you to type in the comments which city you're watching this video from, leave a like, and subscribe so the channel can keep growing and I can keep bringing you even more intense stories. What you can't imagine is that behind this friendly intro lies Amara's personal hell. The wedding had been as majestic as it was exhausting. The reception hall of the five-star hotel, hours earlier packed with hundreds of guests, dazzling crystal chandeliers, and a constant hum of congratulations and laughter, was now silent. In the bridal suite, an almost unreal calm reigned. Amara stood in front of a massive floor-to-ceiling mirror, wrapped in an ivory wedding gown, with a veil of the finest lace cascading over her shoulders. She took a deep breath, trying to regulate the racing beat of her heart. This was, she repeated to herself over and over, the most anticipated day of her life. She had finally become the wife of Kyrie, the man who, for the last 2 years, had been her rock when she lost her parents and had to assume the inheritance of the Vance legacy group. She absently caressed the gold ring shining on her finger. She smiled, remembering the moment that very morning when Kyrie had said, "I do," with a firm, confident voice. In her eyes, he was perfect. Educated, attentive, a God-fearing man, and hard-working. The ideal partner to share life with, and moreover, the perfect partner to continue directing the company her late father, Marcus Vance, had left her. Amara felt like the luckiest black woman in the world. She observed the room, red rose petals scattered over the king-sized bed, aromatic candles lit in the corners, a romantic warmth floating in the air. Suddenly, a playful idea struck her. Kyrie was downstairs in the lobby, sorting out the checkout for some relatives staying at the hotel. It was the perfect opportunity to prepare a little surprise. She didn't want to wait for him sitting on the bed like any ordinary bride. She wanted to see him look for her, bewildered. Stifling a giggle, she gathered up the heavy fabric of her dress and tiptoed to the grand built-in closet in the corner. It was a spacious dressing room, big enough for her to hide behind the row of bespoke suits and gowns. Carefully, she slipped between the coats, crouched down a bit, and pulled the doors shut, leaving just a sliver to peek through. Her heart was beating fast, not out of fear, but from the thrill of imagining Kyrie's face when he didn't find her. She imagined him walking in, calling her name, maybe a little alarmed, and her jumping out of the closet to hug him from behind. She held her breath, strained her ears, and waited in the darkness. Minutes of silence passed. Finally, she heard the soft beep of the keycard sliding into the lock, the click of the mechanism, the sound of the handle turning. Amara smiled in her hiding place and prepared to jump out. Footsteps were heard entering the room, firm strides on the marble foyer that were then muffled as they reached the plush carpet. She mentally counted to 3, ready to leap, but froze instantly. Through the narrow crack in the closet door, she saw the man who had just entered. It wasn't Kyrie. The newcomer was dressed completely in black, leather jacket, dark jeans, a fitted cap obscuring part of his face. His figure was robust, broad-shouldered, but his posture didn't match her husband's. A chill ran down Amara's spine. Was it a thief? Someone ready to hurt her? She covered her mouth with both hands to keep from letting out a scream, praying this stranger would just grab something valuable from the vanity and leave without noticing her presence. However, her hopes shattered when the man didn't head for the bed or the desk. He closed the door calmly, engaged the deadbolt, and then walked in a straight line toward the closet where she was hiding with a certainty that froze her blood. His eyes seemed to pierce through the wood as if he knew exactly where she was. Amara was trembling. Tears of fear blurred her vision. When the man's hand pulled the doors and threw them wide open, she recoiled until she hit the back of the closet, ready to scream. He raised an index finger to his lips, commanding silence. Under the interior light, his face was revealed. Hard features, a sharp jawline, deep mahogany skin, and a small scar on his left temple. His name was Idris, though Amara didn't know that yet. He wasn't carrying a knife or a gun. The only thing he was holding was a smartphone. He looked at her with urgent coldness, with no trace of lust or gratuitous cruelty. Without saying a word, he brought the phone screen close to her face and pressed play on a voice recording. The volume was maxed out. The voice that poured from the speaker sounded as close as if the owner were in the room. And it was a voice Amara knew too well, Kyrie's voice, the man who hours before had promised her eternal love at the altar. In the audio, Kyrie could be heard laughing in a way she had never heard, a dismissive, almost malignant cackle. Then he spoke. He said he was finally married, that he almost vomited from feigning so much sweetness and devotion for 2 years, that he was sick of pretending to be the perfect man to win that woman's trust. The recording continued. Kyrie confessed he had simulated being responsible, punctual at church, attentive to the sermons, just to look good in front of her and the community. Another voice intervened, female, honeyed, and familiar. Sienna, the young woman he had always introduced as his distant cousin, an orphan girl he was supposedly helping out. Her tone in the recording was playful and provocative, so different from the sweet humility she showed Amara. Sienna asked him for patience, reminding him it was all for their future together. Then Kyrie, with a cold and calculating voice, explained his true plan. Now that Amara was his wife, the money would be within his reach too. In 3 months, he planned to destroy her psychologically. He would exploit the fact that her mother, Eleanor, had died from severe depression to convince the world that Amara had inherited the same madness. Amara listened, unable to move a muscle, as Kyrie planned to mix drugs into her drinks to cause hallucinations, panic attacks, and erratic behavior. His goal was to get her declared incompetent to run the company, secure power of attorney over everything, drain the Vance accounts, divorce her, and lock her in a psychiatric facility. Afterward, he said, he would go off with Sienna to live the good life in Europe. Amara's world collapsed in that instant. Her legs gave out, and she slumped down among the piles of shoes at the bottom of the closet. Her face went as pale as a funeral sheet. Every word of the audio was a stab directly to the heart. Kyrie, her husband, the man she trusted most, was a monster. Sienna, whom she had treated like a sister, was his lover and accomplice. Nothing had been a coincidence. It was all a meticulous plan to destroy her. Idris stopped the audio just as the cruel laughter of the couple started up again. He put the phone in his pocket and looked down at Amara, who was sobbing soundlessly, shaken by anguish. He crouched down to be at her level without touching her, respecting the distance, but with a firm gaze. At that moment, footsteps were heard in the hallway, a voice humming happily. It was Kyrie's real voice, returning from the front desk. The handle of the main door moved, but the security chain prevented it from opening fully. "Babe, why is this locked from the inside? You changing?" Kyrie asked from the other side with that sweet tone that used to make Amara's heart flutter and now sounded like the hiss of a snake. Idris locked eyes with her and whispered, barely moving his lips, "You have 2 options. First, scream now, cause a scene, and confront him right this second. But without physical proof ready, and with your nerves shot, he's going to flip it on you. He'll say the recording is fake, that you're hysterical from the stress of the wedding. His plan to make you look crazy starts tonight, and it will kill you slowly." He paused briefly while Kyrie called out again, this time a bit louder, but still patient. "Second option, you shut up, wipe those tears, step out of this closet, and pretend nothing happened. You play his game, but our way. Tonight, you will be the perfect wife he expects to find. You let him believe he's won the game while I help you prepare the counterattack. We will destroy him slowly, with the same cruelty he had reserved for you. Choose, Amara. Scream and lose, or stay quiet and win." She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes, unable to speak. Amidst the pain, a spark of rage began to ignite. She remembered her parents, the company built on her father's sacrifice, the pride of the Vance family name. She couldn't let an opportunist like Kyrie take it all. She took a deep breath, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and nodded. She chose to fight. Amara gathered her strength. Idris nodded toward the bathroom door, signaling her to wash her face to hide the crying. Silently, he slipped toward the balcony door, hidden behind the heavy drapes. Before disappearing, he gave her one last look. "Be strong," his eyes said. Amara went into the bathroom, turned the faucet on full blast to cover any noise, and splashed her face over and over with cold water. The shock helped her regain some control. She looked in the mirror, a fragile young woman with red eyes. She grabbed some makeup from her travel bag, blended away the trails of tears, and breathed deep. "I can do this for Mama. For Daddy. I'll be the best actress tonight," she promised herself. When the water stopped running, she went back to the bedroom, crossed the room, and approached the door. With a hand that was still trembling, she removed the chain and opened it. Kyrie was standing there, grinning from ear to ear, still impeccable in his tuxedo. To anyone else, he was still the image of the perfect son-in-law. "Sorry, baby, I was in the bathroom. Didn't hear you knocking," she said, forcing a tired voice rather than one broken by weeping. Kyrie walked in, closed the door behind him, and hugged her enthusiastically. "Ah, makes sense. I thought you fell asleep on me, girl. And don't lock me out again, all right? We're husband and wife now," he joked with a chuckle. The scent of his expensive cologne, which used to seem intoxicating, now made her stomach turn. The embrace in which she used to feel safe now suffocated her like an iron shackle. Amara let him wrap his arms around her, but her own hung limp. She couldn't hug him back. Kyrie, self-absorbed, didn't notice her stiffness. "You shivering? You cold?" he asked, brushing her cheek with his hand. The contact made her skin crawl with revulsion. "The AC is just really high, that's all," she lied, putting on a weak smile. She took a step back with the excuse of getting water. Kyrie nodded understandingly. "Sit down on the sofa for a sec. I'm going to get changed. I can't take this suit anymore. I've been hot since this morning," he said, heading for the closet where his wife had been hiding just moments before. Amara's heart raced again, seeing him open the doors, but there was no trace of Idris inside. She glanced at the balcony. The curtain moved slightly near a crack in the glass door, a sign that Idris had escaped that way. While Kyrie took off his jacket with his back turned, Amara sat on the sofa, feigning indifference. Her gaze slid involuntarily toward the nightstand. There, face up, Kyrie's phone screen lit up. A new text had come in. She looked at Kyrie. He was still facing away, digging for a more comfortable shirt. Amara leaned in a bit to read the notification. She felt time stop. On the screen, the contact name clearly read, Sienna Cousin, but the message was anything but familial. "Good luck with your performance tonight, baby. Don't forget your vitamins to keep your stamina up. You got hard work to do. Love you." The words, baby, work, and the red heart emoji were like a hammer blow. It was the visual confirmation that nailed down what she'd heard in the recording. There was no room for doubt. Her marriage was a farce. Kyrie's tears asking for her hand in front of her mother's grave? Theater. Amara gripped the fabric of her dress so hard her knuckles turned white. She felt the rage boiling. But she remembered Idris's warning, stay quiet and win. When Kyrie turned around, now changing into a t-shirt, he saw her near the phone and frowned. "Something wrong, babe? Someone call?" he asked, walking over to grab the phone. She looked up with her best innocent expression. "No, it just lit up for a second. Guess it was the family group chat," she replied calmly. Kyrie checked the screen. Amara saw his lips curve into a barely there, secretive smirk as he read Sienna's message before locking the screen and shoving the phone in his pocket. "Yeah, you know how my cousins are. Blowing up the phone with congratulations all day," he improvised, sitting next to her and putting his arm around her shoulders. The night became eternal. Amara had to endure Kyrie's sweet words about their honeymoon, his plans for the future, his promises of unconditional love. Every "I love you" sounded hollow and repulsive. She excused herself, saying her cycle had started and she was exhausted from the long day, avoiding the intimacy he wanted. Kyrie seemed a little disappointed, but kept playing his role of the understanding husband. "Don't worry, my queen. We have a whole lifetime to be together. Get some rest," he murmured, kissing her forehead. When he finally fell asleep, snoring softly, Amara lay awake staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open. She turned her back to Kyrie, and the tears began to flow again in silence. In the gloom, she felt between the sofa cushions. Before leaving, she had seen Idris slide something there. Her fingers touched a small, rigid card. It was a black business card, sober, with silver lettering. Idris Bishop, private investigator, and a phone number. No logo, no company name. At dawn, while Kyrie hummed in the shower, Amara locked herself discreetly in the walk-in closet, took out the card, and looked at it. Her eyes in the mirror no longer looked like those of a pampered girl. They had acquired a new hardness. The naive girl had died the night before, murdered by betrayal. What remained was a woman ready to fight. With trembling but determined hands, she took her own phone, dialed the number on the card, and texted, "It's Amara. Teach me how to destroy them. I want them to suffer more than I thought possible." She hit send, then deleted the conversation. She walked out of the closet with her head held high. The war had just begun. A week passed since that night had turned her honeymoon into hell. To the outside world, Amara and Kyrie's marriage seemed idyllic. Perfect photos appeared on social media, affectionate gestures, romantic brunches. Inside the family mansion in Buckhead, however, a calculated farce was being staged. Amara had become a consummate actress. Every morning she smiled sweetly at the man she actually wanted to poison. She allowed Kyrie to caress her, to call her "my queen," while inside she accumulated a repulsion that turned into fuel for her determination. That morning, the sun bathed the dining room in golden light, but the atmosphere felt icy to her. Kyrie was devouring the breakfast prepared by the staff with gusto. Amara, in front of a bowl of oatmeal, was just playing with her spoon. Kyrie put down his silverware and looked at her with feigned tenderness. "What's wrong, babe? You've barely eaten these past few days. Still worried about the company?" he asked, reaching out to take her hand. She felt nauseous at the contact, but forced herself to maintain the scene. "Yeah, I have a headache all the time. I'm exhausted with all the paperwork from Daddy's estate. It's all too much for me," she lamented with a weak voice, carefully rehearsed with Idris. Kyrie smiled with a satisfaction so subtle it almost went unnoticed, but Amara caught it. "See? I told you not to pressure yourself so much. Your mental health comes first, honey. Remember how your mom started feeling? Those migraines, the anxiety? I don't want you ending up like her," he said, invoking the memory of the woman Amara had loved most to support his plan. She had to swallow the rage of hearing her mother Eleanor's name used as a manipulative tool. She lowered her head and nodded weakly. "I know. I'm scared of ending up like Mama," she whispered, feeding the narrative Kyrie needed to believe. Mid-morning, she asked for permission to go to the salon to try and relax. Kyrie not only let her go, but celebrated it as a sign that she was starting to distract herself with superficial things. Amara, however, had another appointment. She took an Uber, switched vehicles halfway to ensure no one followed, and arrived at a small, discreet coffee shop on the outskirts of Atlanta. At the darkest table in the corner, Idris was already waiting in a cap and plaid shirt. There were no affectionate greetings. She barely sat down before he pushed a thick manila envelope toward the center of the table. "Here's the result of the additional investigation you asked for," he said in a low, contained voice. "I reviewed the supposed car accident your father died in a year ago. The police closed it as brake failure, but my gut said otherwise." Amara looked at the envelope with shaking hands, opened it slowly, and pulled out several photos of her father's mangled luxury sedan, followed by bank statements. Idris pointed to some lines with his finger. "These are transfers made 2 days before the accident from a personal account of Kyrie's to a guy named Rahim, an ex-mechanic with a record. Look at the figure, $50,000, just when Kyrie had an online gambling debt of almost 300 grand about to come due. Amara covered her mouth in horror, seeing the dates and the amount. "Are you saying Kyrie had my father's brakes tampered with?" she murmured, barely voiceless. Idris nodded. "Your father refused to lend him money to cover his bets. Kyrie got desperate. Collectors were chasing him. Taking your father out of the picture and marrying you as fast as possible was the perfect way to access the fortune and control of the company. He's not just a cheater and a scammer, Amara. He's a murderer." Idris stated it without embellishment. Tears welled up again, this time mixed with anger so intense her chest hurt. The man she slept next to every night had organized the death of his own father-in-law. She clenched her fist so hard her nails dug into her palm. "I'm going to kill him," she muttered with hate. "I'm going to kill him with my own hands." "No," Idris cut her off immediately, looking at her sternly. "If you kill him, you end up in prison. Sienna plays the victim and keeps enjoying whatever you lose. There is a sentence much worse than a quick death. Let him lose his freedom, his reputation, his money, and his power. Let him rot in prison for the rest of his life. That is justice." Amara wiped her tears abruptly, took a deep breath, and let the words settle. "You're right. Dying would be too easy for him. He has to live his own hell." That same night, returning home, a new test awaited her. She found Kyrie in the living room, sitting on her late mother's favorite sofa, accompanied by Sienna. Seeing that woman in her house, smiling with false modesty right where her mother used to read, turned her stomach. Kyrie stood up with an exaggeratedly happy expression. "Babe, you're home. Look, remember Sienna, the distant cousin who came to the wedding? She got kicked out of her apartment because of some lease issue. She's alone in the city. I told her she could stay here a few days. I mean, the house is huge. We have plenty of rooms," he explained as if he were doing an act of charity. Sienna stood up with a pleading gesture. "I'm so sorry to bother you, Amara. I don't want to be a burden. Kyrie is the only family I have here. I didn't know where to go," she said, with that sweet voice that was so deceiving. Amara observed her, young, pretty, clothes a bit tight, but pretending to be modest. Behind that good girl face, she could already see the snake. She forced a warm smile. "Please, Sienna, don't talk nonsense. You're family. Make yourself at home. It'll be good for me to have company when Kyrie is at the office. We can chat," she replied with an impeccably kind tone. Kyrie and Sienna exchanged a quick look, relaxed by what they thought was naive acceptance. They didn't imagine that Amara actually felt favored. Having the enemy under the same roof would make it easier to watch her. That same night, while Kyrie and Sienna chatted on the terrace, Amara slipped into the study and the living room. She took several tiny button-shaped cameras Idris had given her out of her purse and stuck them in strategic spots. Behind a painting in the living room, among the books in the study, next to the kitchen cabinet, all connected to a burner phone she hid in her room. Before sleeping, now alone, she checked the camera app. The image of the kitchen appeared sharp on her screen. There was Kyrie preparing tea, the herbal tea she used to drink at night. Amara saw him look around nervously, take a small packet from his pocket, and pour a white powder into the cup meant for her, stirring until it dissolved. His face, far from affectionate, showed coldness and concentration. Amara recorded the clip and saved it. It was the first clear proof of poisoning. She looked at the screen with a new coldness. "Prepare your poison, Kyrie, but not a drop will enter my body," she told herself. The silent war inside that mansion had just been officially declared. The next morning, Kyrie entered the bedroom with a tray, a steaming cup, and some toast. He placed everything with theatrical delicacy on the nightstand. "Good morning, my beautiful wife," he greeted, sitting on the bed and stroking her arm. "I made you a special tea. It's a recipe a doctor friend gave me. They say it helps calm the nerves, prevents depression and stress. I don't want you ending up like your mother," he added, using Eleanor as a weapon again. Amara had to suppress the urge to throw the liquid in his face. She sat up slowly, feigning exhaustion. "Thank you. You're so attentive to me," she answered, taking the cup in her hands. The heat seeped through the porcelain, but her heart was frozen. She inhaled the aroma. Behind the jasmine scent, she detected a chemical note, almost imperceptible, that perhaps others wouldn't have noticed. Kyrie watched her unblinkingly, waiting to see the concoction go down her throat. She knew she couldn't refuse it. That would raise suspicions. She needed to fake it. She touched the cup to her lips and simulated a small sip. Then she started coughing as if she had burned herself. "Ouch! It's really hot," she complained, moving it away a bit. "Careful, honey," he said, somewhat impatient beneath the mask of concern. Then his cell phone rang on the dresser. Kyrie turned instinctively to look at it. In that brief instant, Amara tilted the cup toward a large potted sansevieria, a snake plant, next to the bed, and poured almost all the contents onto the soil and decorative stones. The liquid was absorbed without leaving hardly a visible trace. When Kyrie turned back, she was already bringing the cup to her mouth to make a final swallowing gesture. Then she left it on the tray, empty save for a little sediment. "It tastes weird, a little bitter," she commented, almost baiting him. Kyrie smiled, relieved to see the apparently empty cup. "It's normal. Good herbs are always bitter. You'll get used to it. Now go shower. You have the meeting with the shareholders today. You need to look perfect," Kyrie reminded her. He was counting on the drug kicking in during that meeting, so Amara would seem confused and unbalanced in front of the investors. She decided to give him exactly the show he expected, but under her control. From that day on, she began carefully constructing the image of a woman losing control. In front of Sienna, she pretended to forget where she left things, called her by the housekeeper's name, and apologized with a confused look. 3 days later, during dinner, she purposely knocked her plate to the floor and screamed in terror, claiming she saw a black shadow in the corner of the dining room. The broken plates, the scream, her tears, it all looked like a breakdown. Kyrie and Sienna acted perfectly. They pretended to worry, consoled her, took her to bed, but when she turned her back, they exchanged satisfied smiles. "The meds are working faster than we thought," Kyrie whispered to Sienna, convinced no one heard them. Parallel to the theater, Amara continued with her main mission. Idris had provided more intel. Sienna kept an old apartment in someone else's name where she kept a safe with key documents, fake passports, real identities, and papers for a religious marriage between her and Kyrie celebrated 2 years prior. It was proof that the union with Amara had been a fraud from the start. On Friday, Sienna announced she would be at the beauty salon all day. Kyrie had a golf game scheduled with partners, actually a trap meeting organized by Idris to keep him occupied. Amara faked a migraine and said she would stay home. As soon as Sienna's car crossed the gate, she changed in record time. Tight black clothes, a cap, face mask, she left through the back door where a taxi hired by Idris was waiting. The ride to the apartment building felt eternal. Her first clearly illegal act, breaking into someone else's home. She didn't care. For justice, she was willing to cross lines. Thanks to a copy of the key fob Idris had obtained, she entered the building without issues. Sienna's apartment was on the 15th floor, silent and dusty. She opened the lock stealthily, turned on a small flashlight, and went straight to the bedroom, following the precise instructions Idris had given her. Behind a built-in closet, among old clothes, she found the metal safe. She took out a small electronic device, a code cracker, and placed it over the keypad. The numbers on the device's screen started flashing, testing combinations. 1 minute, 2. Cold sweat ran down her forehead. Come on," she whispered to herself. Finally, a green light lit up, and the door clicked open. Inside were stacks of cash, jewelry, and most importantly, a clear folder with documents. Amara opened it. Passports with Kyrie's photo, but the name Trayvon, a fake ID, and a religious marriage certificate between Kyrie and Sienna dated 2 years ago, long before he knelt before Amara. This was pure dynamite. It proved the wedding with Amara was done in bad faith. She took photos of everything with her phone and put the originals in her backpack. She was just getting ready to leave when she heard the beep of the front door opening. Someone had swiped a key card. Her heart froze. It was Sienna. She heard her cursing on the phone, complaining that the salon was closed for renovations and telling Kyrie she was stopping by her old place to grab some clothes. The footsteps were approaching the bedroom. There was no exit through the window. It was sealed, and the height was deadly. The only option was the closet. Amara closed the safe, left everything apparently in order, and got into the other compartment of the closet, hiding behind a pile of coats. She closed the doors almost all the way, leaving a minimal crack. Fear enveloped her. It was déjà vu of her wedding night, only now if Sienna found her, she would probably try to kill her. Sienna entered the room, still talking on the phone. "Yeah, Kyrie, I'm in the room. I'm grabbing my red leather jacket. I think I left it here," she was saying. Amara held her breath. She saw her silhouette moving through the crack. She approached the closet. "Let's see where I put that jacket," she muttered, grabbing the doorknob. Amara closed her eyes and gripped the pepper spray in her pocket. She was ready to attack. The door was opening. Just then, a deafening siren resonated through the entire building. The fire alarm started blaring at full volume, followed by a recording asking to evacuate via the emergency stairs due to smoke on the 15th floor. There was no real smoke. It was Idris who had remotely hacked the building's security system. Sienna jumped, let go of the closet handle, and backed away, covering her ears. "No way, not right now," she groaned, grabbing her purse and running out without remembering the jacket. Amara heard the front door close and the rush of neighbors in the hallway. She waited a few seconds, then stepped out of the closet, shaking like a leaf. She wasted no time, grabbed her backpack with the documents, and went down the fire escape, blending in with the crowd of scared residents. No one paid attention to a woman in a mask in the middle of the chaos. Stepping out onto the street through a side door, she saw a black sedan with the engine running. She got in and dropped the backpack on the seat. Idris opened it, quickly reviewed the contents, and smiled with satisfaction. Fake passports, secret marriage, real identity. This is a nuclear weapon. We could put them in jail whenever we want. But according to your plan, first, we leave them bankrupt, he said. Amara nodded, with a burning look in her eyes. She didn't just want jail. She wanted to destroy their greed and arrogance, to strip them of everything for which they had betrayed and murdered. In the following days, the financial counterattack began. As the legitimate heiress, she had access to accounts Kyrie didn't even know about. Guided by her father's old financial advisor, a loyal man, Amara began discreetly moving liquid assets, cash, deposits, bonds, via small spaced-out transfers to secure offshore accounts not publicly linked to her, so as not to trigger alarms Kyrie controlled. To trap Kyrie, they leveraged his greed. Amara knew he was desperate to scrape together money for his gambling debts and maintain his luxury life with Sienna. Idris organized, using intermediaries, a supposed real estate investment opportunity in Phantom Land in a protected zone. They prepared elegant brochures, presentations, promising returns of up to triple in 6 months. Kyrie took the bait instantly. One night, he came home exultant with a folder in his hand. "Look at this, babe. We got a golden proposal, a luxury project, massive returns. I just need your signature as president to release the initial capital from the company reserves. It's an incredible opportunity to grow your father's legacy," he told her. Amara, brushing her hair in front of the mirror with an absent expression, feigned doubt. She took the pen he offered. "Are you sure it's that good?" she asked, trembling just enough to seem fragile. "Of course, I already checked everything. You trust me, right?" he insisted hurriedly. She planted her signature, slightly modifying the stroke from her usual one, so she could claim duress or forgery later. Kyrie didn't notice the detail. He was only thinking about the millions of dollars he imagined falling into his account. He didn't know the money would disappear into the hands of Idris's team, leaving behind a hole that would point to him as responsible. The next step was to undermine the alliance between Kyrie and Sienna. Amara knew a relationship built on malice didn't handle distrust well. She began sowing doubts carefully. One afternoon, while Sienna was painting her nails in the living room, Amara sat next to her with a distracted gesture. She seemed absorbed in her own thoughts. "Sienna," she whispered. "Yeah, Amara," she replied without looking up much. Last night, Kyrie was talking in his sleep again. Lately he does it a lot, but yesterday was weird. He muttered something like, "When we get the money, I'll have to get rid of Sienna. She knows too much. She's dangerous. Better to marry Keisha, she'll be easier to handle." "Do you know a Keisha?" she asked, feigning naivety. The nail polish almost fell from Sienna's fingers. Keisha was the name of an ex-girlfriend of Kyrie's, a thorn in her side for a long time. Sienna let out a forced laugh. "Oh, you surely heard wrong. Kyrie sleeps like a log. Must have been a weird dream of yours," she retorted. Amara shook her head gently. "I heard it crystal clear. But anyway, maybe it was just a delusion. Sometimes my head plays tricks on me," she added, standing up. She left Sienna biting her lip, her mind tied in knots. The seed of paranoia was already planted. That night, the hidden cameras captured a loud argument in the guest room where Sienna was staying. She accused Kyrie of wanting to abandon her, of having another woman, of threatening to get rid of her when he got the money. Kyrie, ignorant of the source of the suspicion, got furious and insulted her for being paranoid. The fight ended with a door slam. Amara, from her bed, watched the scene on her phone with a cold smile. Watching her enemies fight each other was a bonus advantage. The strategy of simulating insanity reached its critical point when Kyrie decided to accelerate his plan. Overwhelmed by financial pressure, his fights with Sienna, and the gap in the accounting, he couldn't wait 3 months anymore. He needed to obtain legal guardianship of Amara immediately. One morning, he provoked a scene. He purposely broke a crystal vase beloved by Amara's mother and accused her of throwing it in a fit of rage. She, prepared, threw herself to the floor, feigning a nervous collapse, crying, screaming her mother's name, backing into a corner. The household staff looked horrified at the scene. Kyrie seized the occasion to call his lawyer and a corrupt psychiatrist he had already paid off, Dr. Hightower. "Doctor, my wife is worse. She's having violent episodes. She's a danger to herself and others. I need you to come today to do an evaluation and issue a report to request legal custody," he moaned into the phone, faking anguish. What he didn't know was that Idris had been tapping his calls for weeks. As soon as he heard the psychiatrist's name, he moved. Dr. Hightower's car was stopped on the way to the mansion in a traffic jam caused by a minor simulated accident. In his place appeared another specialist, Dr. Caldwell, a prestigious and honest psychiatrist from the city hospital, accompanied by 2 nurses from a recognized mental health institution. They rang the doorbell with total formality. Kyrie, seeing a different doctor, was thrown off. "Who are you?" "I was expecting Dr. Hightower," he asked suspiciously. Dr. Hightower had a minor incident. "He asked me to substitute for him urgently," Dr. Caldwell explained, showing his credentials. "I understand this is an important evaluation. It's not good to delay it." Kyrie hesitated for a few seconds. Canceling everything in that moment meant losing the momentum he had prepared. Besides, he was convinced the meds Amara had taken would have left her a mental wreck in front of anyone. Confident in his poison, he let them in. The exam took place in the master bedroom. Amara was sitting on the edge of the bed with messy hair and a seemingly lost gaze. Kyrie, Sienna, and the lawyer stood to the side as witnesses. Dr. Caldwell sat in front of her, recorder in hand, and started with basic questions: name, date, location, recent events. Kyrie suppressed a smile, expecting Amara to babble incoherencies about shadows and voices. But to his surprise, she stopped rocking, raised her head, and looked at him with clarity. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and answered with a firm voice, "Yes, doctor, I hear you perfectly. I know who I am, I know where I am, And I also know why my husband is so nervous today, she added, glancing sideways at Kyrie. The doctor continued with cognitive memory and calculation tests. Amara answered each one with precision, even the complex math operations, and gave a coherent account of the last few days without contradictions. Kyrie started sweating. How could she be so lucid if she had supposedly taken high doses of psychotropic drugs? Sienna, beside him, clenched her fists. After a long hour of evaluation, Dr. Caldwell closed the folder. "Mr. Sterling," he said, looking at the husband, "according to my assessment, your wife is in perfect mental state. She presents no symptoms of severe depression, psychosis, or delirium. Her judgment and memory are intact. I will issue a report declaring her fully competent to manage her affairs. I see no medical basis whatsoever for a guardianship request," he concluded. "That's impossible! She's been medicating!" escaped Kyrie's mouth before he could bite his tongue. "Medicating with what exactly?" asked the doctor, frowning. "With relaxing herbal infusions," Kyrie rectified clumsily. When the doctor and lawyer retired, leaving the couple alone for a few moments, Kyrie was livid. Amara stood up slowly, smoothed her blouse, and walked toward him with cat-like steps. She leaned into his ear and spoke in a frozen whisper. "Your tea tasted a little bitter, Kyrie. That's why, since day one, I've been pouring it into the soil of that snake plant in the corner and refilling the cup with regular tea. The only thing poisoned by your pills has been the plant, not me," she murmured. Kyrie's face fell apart. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. Amara smiled, a smile that was no longer sweet, but lethal. "I've been acting this whole time, and you've been the easiest audience to fool. Enjoy the beginning of your ruin," she added, turning around. While she walked out, patrol cars were starting to approach the entrance. Idris had tipped off the police about the fake real estate fraud. The trap Kyrie had set to drive her crazy was starting to close in on him. The culmination of everything arrived at the Vance Legacy Group Anniversary Gala held in the grand ballroom of a luxury hotel downtown. Thousands of crystal lights illuminated a space decorated with white roses and blue ribbons. Politicians, top executives, journalists, and major investors filled the room. At the entrance, Amara, in a deep blue gown and a discreet satin veil matching it, welcomed guests with an enigmatic smile. Beside her was Kyrie, in a new black tuxedo, his face shiny before the cameras, but his back soaked in cold sweat. Since Dr. Caldwell's visit, he had been walking on glass. He didn't know exactly what Amara knew or when she was going to explode. She hadn't kicked him out of the house, hadn't denounced him immediately. She forced him to keep playing the role of CEO, to be present that night to keep up appearances. On the other side of the room, Sienna drank nervously in a red dress that was too flashy for protocol. She felt watched from all sides. Rumors about her presence in the mansion were already circulating. The ceremony began with the usual speeches and a corporate video. Then, Amara went up to the stage. The murmur died down. She took the microphone and spoke with a clear voice. "Good evening. Thank you for joining us on such an important day for the company my father founded on the basis of honesty and hard work. Tonight, we aren't just celebrating an anniversary. It's also a night to speak the truth. When termites enter a house, you don't see them at first, but little by little they destroy the beams. Today, I want you to meet the most ambitious person this corporation has had, someone who could propel it or sink it. My husband, Kyrie," she announced. The attendees applauded politely. Kyrie, believing it was a public recognition, went up to the stage with a tense smile. He took the mic and started a speech about future vision, global markets, and his father-in-law's legacy. He didn't get to finish the sentence. Suddenly the lights went out and the room was left in darkness, save for the beam of the giant projector behind them. On the screen, no charts or institutional videos appeared, but a recording, the living room of their house captured by one of the hidden cameras. Kyrie and Sienna appeared sitting on the sofa with a bottle of expensive wine, laughing their heads off. Kyrie's voice boomed through the speakers. He could be heard saying how easy it had been to fool Amara, that she was just as weak as her mother, that simply upping the dose of pills would be enough to end her up in a psych ward. Sienna was heard asking what they would do if she suspected, and Kyrie answering that they could always arrange one more accident. The attendees were petrified. Gasps of disbelief came from all sides. Journalists instantly focused on the screen and then on Kyrie's face, illuminated intermittently by the video. It didn't stop there. The video changed to images of documents, the fake passports under the name Trayvon, his true alias, with Kyrie's photo, bank statements showing the diversion of company money, the religious marriage contract with Sienna. It was a public X-ray of his crimes. Kyrie stumbled back, dropping the microphone. He looked at Amara standing to the side of the stage without a single smile, with the cold face of an executioner. "It's all a montage! Deep fakes!" he screamed without a mic, with a high and desperate voice that got lost among the indignant murmurs. He tried to flee, pushing photographers and cameramen, launching himself toward a side exit. But at the emergency door, Idris was waiting for him, leaning calmly against the wall. "Where are you going, Trayvon? The party's just getting started," he quipped. Kyrie, beside himself, threw a punch. Idris dodged the blow with ease, immobilized his arm, and slammed him against the wall. In seconds, several police officers who were already inside the hotel pounced to stop him and cuff him. At the other end of the room, Sienna tried to save herself. Seeing Kyrie trapped, she started screaming that he had forced her, that she was a victim, that she could testify against him for the murder of Marcus Vance. She sold him out without shame, but it was too late. The evidence clearly showed her complicity. Plainclothes officers and female agents surrounded her and dragged her out of the room while she kicked, cried, and cursed. The anniversary gala turned into a national scandal. Amara remained on stage watching the two traitors being dragged toward the exit amidst flashes and cameras. She didn't feel euphoric joy, but a deep sense of relief. Still, she knew trapped predators could remain dangerous. 2 days later, the media was still flooded with news about the case. However, the justice system had its cracks. Despite the mountain of evidence for fraud and scams, the accusation for her father's murder required slower forensic analysis. A cunning lawyer, paid with Kyrie's last hidden resources, managed to get a measure of high-security house arrest, alleging heart problems and promising cooperation. Sienna didn't run with the same luck. She remained in a common cell and, furious at Kyrie's betrayal, started singing to the detectives, providing more details that tightened the noose around her lover's neck. Kyrie, although out of jail for a few days, was ruined. His accounts were frozen, the luxury cars and apartment repossessed, rich friends disappeared. He was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts, hiding from journalists and collectors of his old gambling debts. He felt like the victim of a great injustice, unable to recognize that everything he was living was a direct consequence of his actions. One night of torrential rain, sitting in the damp room, he drank cheap liquor and stared at an illegal pistol he had bought with his last bills. He knew he couldn't escape the country. He was being watched, nor did he want to rot behind bars. If he fell, he wanted to drag Amara with him. "I'm not going to let you win, Amara. Never," he growled, tucking the weapon inside his jacket before stepping out into the downpour. At 2:00 a.m., the Vance mansion rested in silence, with barely any exterior lights on. After the scandal, security had been reinforced, but no one knew the blind spots better than the man who had ordered the old system installed. Kyrie himself scaled a section of wall covered in ivy around the back, dodged the field of vision of some cameras, pried open a small kitchen window with a crowbar, and entered. The thunder and the noise of the rain muffled the shattering glass. The smell of lavender air freshener turned his stomach, reminding him of the home that was no longer his. He advanced stealthily toward the stairs. His destination was as clear as his hate: Amara's master bedroom. But as he crossed the living room, the lights snapped on. Sitting in an armchair waiting for him was Idris. He was wearing normal clothes, no signs of sleep. He seemed to have been expecting him. "I knew the rat would come back to his sewer," he commented calmly, keeping his hand near his waist where he hid his service weapon. "Move! This is between me and my wife," Kyrie roared, pulling out the gun with shaking hands. Idris stood up slowly, raising his hand so as not to provoke. "It's over, Kyrie. Police are on the way. Sienna sang about your location. Turn yourself in and stop making it worse." "To hell with you!" screamed Kyrie, pulling the trigger. The shot resonated through the whole house. Idris threw himself to the floor, using the armchair as a shield. The bullet grazed his left arm, causing blood to flow instantly. Amara, upstairs, woke up startled by the blast. She ran out to the landing of the stairs and saw Kyrie with the gun in his hand, unhinged. "Kyrie!" she exclaimed. Seeing her, he no longer paid attention to Idris. He ran up the stairs at full speed, panting and eyes wild. "Come here! We're gonna die together, Amara!" he screamed, out of his mind. She, scared, didn't lose her head. She didn't run to lock herself in the bedroom, knowing a wooden door wouldn't hold long. Instead, she fled toward the bedroom balcony, an open area overlooking the front garden. Wind and rain hit her face as she stepped out. She backed up until the balcony railing touched her back. Below, the darkness of the garden and the pavement extended far down. Kyrie appeared at the glass door, soaked, gun pointing at her chest. "Show's over. No more cameras, no doctors, no police. Just you and me," he spat, advancing step by step. "You thought you were smarter than me, but you're still the same weak little girl." Amara raised her chin, looking directly at him. The rainwater mixed with the tears she didn't intend to hide. "The weak woman you knew died the night she heard your voice planning to kill me. The one standing in front of you is your worst nightmare," she answered without looking away. Kyrie let out a broken laugh. "Nightmare? You ain't nothing but he started to say, but didn't finish. From behind, staggering, Idris appeared and launched himself at him. The two men fell to the balcony floor, slippery from the water. The gun went flying into a corner. They engaged in a brutal fight, trading blows, rolling from one side to the other. Idris, weakened by the bleeding arm, was starting to lose strength. Kyrie, crazed and running on adrenaline, fought like an animal, biting him and kicking his wound. With an especially strong shove, Kyrie managed to break free and crawled toward where the gun had fallen next to a planter. Idris tried to get up, but his strength betrayed him. "Amara, run!" he managed to yell. But she didn't move inside. She saw Kyrie reaching for the weapon, starting to get up with it. If she fled, Idris would be his immediate target. Something lit up inside her. She remembered the crash course in self-defense Idris had taught her, the basic strikes. She remembered her father and mother. She remembered the trembling girl in the closet and decided she would never be her again. When Kyrie was halfway up, before he could aim, Amara ran toward him and launched a frontal kick with all her strength, driving her heel into Kyrie's solar plexus and then shoving his shoulder. Soaked, standing on wet tiles and off balance, he lost his footing. He stumbled back against the low railing of the balcony, which he himself had insisted on giving that minimalist design, and fell into the void. "Amara!" he screamed with a howl as his body plummeted. A dry, brutal noise was heard when he impacted first against the roof of Idris's car, parked right below, and then rolled to crash against the cobblestone ground. The gun fired into the air aimlessly before landing far away. A strange silence followed the crash. Only the drumming of the rain filled the air. Amara stood motionless, gripping the railing, breathing heavily. She looked down. Kyrie's body lay in an unnatural posture on the cobblestones, barely moving. He wasn't dead. The car had cushioned part of the blow, but one of his legs was clearly shattered. Idris sat up with effort, got to his feet beside her, and rested his good hand on her shoulder. "You did good, Amara," he whispered before slumping down again from exhaustion. In the distance, sirens could already be heard approaching. Blue and red lights began to reflect on the facade. The fall of a king had been caused by the queen he underestimated. Minutes later, the house was full of police and paramedics. While they attended to Idris and prepared Kyrie to be transported in handcuffs to a prison hospital, Amara went down to the entrance. She observed her husband, That man she had once loved, soaked, dirty with mud and blood, screaming in pain when the officers immobilized his broken leg to load him onto the stretcher. There was nothing left in him of the confident seducer who walked the halls of power. He was just a defeated criminal. Amara walked up under the rain to the edge of the stretcher. An officer wanted to intervene, but she looked at him with determination, and he stepped aside. She raised her hand and calmly slid the wedding ring off her finger. She felt the cold of the metal for the last time before letting it drop onto Curie's chest. The small clink it made, hitting his shirt buttons, echoed in their heads. "Take it," Amara said with an icy voice. "Consider it my last charity. You can sell it to buy cigarettes or instant ramen at the prison commissary. Because starting today, not a single dollar of my father's money will reach your hands. Your name has been erased from the history of this family." Kyrie looked at her with wide eyes. He wanted to scream insults, curse her, but the words choked him. In her pupils, he saw something he had never seen before. Pure fear. The man who had always believed he was in control now found himself facing a woman who had survived everything he had attempted. While they loaded him into the ambulance, in another part of the city, fate was also catching up with Sienna. After securing brief freedom on bail, she had tried to flee the country with a fake passport, buying a ticket to a place with no extradition treaty. But immigration systems already had her face and prints flagged in red. At the automatic airport checkpoint, alarms went off. In a few seconds, TSA agents surrounded her. She shrieked, claimed she was pregnant, begged for mercy, but ended up with wrists cuffed, recorded by dozens of cell phones. The video of her capture went viral at the same pace as Kyrie's fall. Back at the mansion, when the ambulance with Kyrie and the patrol cars drove away amidst sirens, the rain began to subside. Amara remained on the porch, watching the lights disappear. Idris, with his arm bandaged, stepped out beside her. He said nothing. His presence was support enough. She looked at him sideways. "Does it hurt a lot?" she asked, feeling guilty. He sketched a tired smile. "It doesn't even touch the pain you've endured these months. The arm will heal in a couple of weeks. Your heart will take a little longer." Amara nodded. For the first time in a long time, she took a deep breath without feeling an oppressive weight on her chest. She smelled the wet earth, the clean scent after the storm. That was the smell of freedom. 6 months later, the seasons had changed, and so had Amara's life. Justice, though slow, had finally fallen with force. The trial of Kyrie and Sienna was one of the most followed by the press. In the packed courtroom, Kyrie appeared in a wheelchair. The leg never fully recovered, partly due to fights he had provoked in prison and partly due to his own negligence. He was gaunt with premature gray hair. Beside him, Sienna showed a face without makeup, dull and unrecognizable. The judge was relentless. Forensic evidence confirmed the tampering with Marcus Vance's car brakes, the money transactions, the planning of Amara's poisoning, the corporate fraud, the attempted murder with a firearm. The sentence was clear: life in prison for both, without parole. Sienna erupted in screams, insulting Kyrie, the judge, everyone while they dragged her out. Kyrie, on the other hand, could only hang his head while silent tears fell onto his lap. It wasn't clear if he was crying from guilt or rage, but it didn't matter anymore. He had lost his freedom, his status, his money, and even his winner image. He had a whole life left to live with what he had done. Leaving the courthouse, journalists surrounded Amara. This time she didn't hide or dodge the cameras. She wore an elegant blazer, a modern silk scarf, and a serene expression. She answered a few questions calmly, making it clear her priority now was to lead Vance Holdings with transparency and strengthen social programs in memory of her parents. She wasn't a victim. She saw herself as a survivor and a leader. Under her command, the company flourished. She purged the board of Kyrie's accomplices, hired capable and trustworthy people. She reinforced internal controls. In the business world, they started calling her the Iron Lady of the Vance Empire, firm but empathetic. One afternoon, leaving the office, instead of going straight home, She drove to a tree-lined cemetery on the outskirts. The sky was dyed in shades of orange and violet. She walked along the stone path with 2 bouquets of white lilies in her hands. She stopped before 2 tombs tended with care. The black marble headstones showed her parents' names. She crouched down, placed the flowers, and ran her hand affectionately over the engraved names. "Mama, Daddy, it's done," she whispered. "They paid for what they did to us. The company is safe. So am I. You can rest easy. I promise I'll take care of everything you built." A soft breeze stirred the fabric of her scarf like an invisible caress. Amara closed her eyes and let the peace of that moment envelop her. "They'd be very proud of you," said a familiar voice behind her. Amara turned and found Idris, more formal than usual, in a light blue button-down and dress slacks without his old leather jacket. The scar on his arm was barely noticeable under the sleeve. "Have you been here long?" she asked, standing up. "Just got here. I brought this," he replied, holding up a clear plastic folder. "It's the case closure report. Officially, you no longer need the services of a private investigator." She took the folder, but instead of looking at the papers, she looked at him. "So, this is goodbye. Our professional contract is over." "No," he said with a half-smile. Idris hesitated for an instant, something unusual for him. A bond had formed between them that went beyond work. He scratched the back of his neck, nervous. "Technically, yes, but I hear Vance Holdings is looking for a new head of security they can trust. And coincidentally, I'm thinking of stopping living in the shadows. I feel like a more stable job," he explained. Amara let out a clean, light laugh. "What a coincidence! Although the position has demanding requirements," she joked. "The head of security has to be available almost 24 hours and maybe endure a work dinner with me some weekend." Idris grinned openly, a smile that made him look younger and less imposing. "I think I fit that profile, especially the dinner part," he answered. They stood together in silence, watching the sunset. They didn't speak of love or future commitments. Amara didn't want to give herself away lightly again. Both knew that what they had needed to be built slowly, on trust and time, not on the urgency of trauma. But in the way Idris looked at her and the calm she felt by his side, one could sense the future could be luminous. That night, Amara returned to the mansion, which finally felt like a true home. She went up to the master bedroom she had completely redecorated. Walls in light tones, furniture rearranged, no trace of Kyrie. She walked to the new walk-in closet, opened the doors, and gazed at her work suits perfectly organized. She remembered the terrified young woman who had shrunk in the back of a similar closet, trembling while listening to her sentence in the form of a recording. That scene seemed to belong to another life. She approached the vanity, opened a small case, and took out a black card, Idris's old business card. She looked at it for a moment and smiled before putting it back. She wouldn't throw it away. It was a reminder that she had fallen very deep, but also that she had known how to get up. She closed the closet doors with a decisive click. She turned off the lights, leaving only the bedside lamp on, and lay back in bed. She tucked herself in, closed her eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, she fell asleep without fear of not waking up, without fear of being poisoned or attacked in the dark. The door to her past, with its shadows and pain, had closed at last. On the other side, a new life was just beginning. If you've made it this far, you already know the price Amara had to pay for betrayal. Now, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place. That way, I'll know you want more dark stories like this one, and the next one might be waiting for you.